From Canada, Citizens Forum, where we look at the important issues of the day through a lens of democracy and media and try to figure out, how do we build a better country for ourselves? Hello, everybody. Welcome to From Canada, Citizens Forum. My name is Jack Etkin. My guest this segment is Stephen Crosier. We're going to be talking about something which may not seem like the most important thing in the world, but believe me, it is very important. And we're talking about BC, but it's the same, I think, right across Canada, unfortunately. And we're going to be talking about basically who runs our political parties. Because if the members of a party have no control over the party and the leadership is working seemingly for somebody else, and we're talking about the BC NDP, which is the government here in British Columbia, but it's the same, I think, in all the big parties, in every province and federally as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about, and away we go. Stephen, let me ask you first, how long have you been in the BC NDP?
So I was teaching abroad, and I came back to Canada in 2007. And so I became a member at that point, but I haven't been an active member so much until about the last 10 years, I guess, something like that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And you're basically working with a small or, a group of other people who kind of feel the same way as what we're going to be talking about during this discussion.
Yes, and I would say that some are still in the NDP. There are others that have been fed up and quit, but still stay in touch, hopefully,
yeah.
with hope in their hearts. So that's what I would say. And I think it's something that the party itself perhaps doesn't recognize. That is the strength that would be there. Were we more democratic? Were we more inclusive? And so I think that that's a real failure on the part of the leadership of the party.
And I don't think they're interested in that. I think they like it the way it is, where a small group has all the power and to hell with everybody else.
I've often said, and this is not just, and I think you're referring as well, or you did refer, it's not just with the BC NDP, but it's pretty much across Canada, it's pretty much around the world, that people are falling into this pattern of sort of leadership where they want to maintain their power, they don't want to use it, and I think that's what's happening with leadership. They are contracting, and this is throughout the political system, I would say, and it's a cycle, right? I would say there are times when we open up, and there are times when we close down, and we're in multiple crises right now, and there's a tendency to close down.
You ran for a vice presidency of the BC NDP at the recent convention. This is for the BC NDP, who are the provincial government here. Mm-hmm. You ran for a vice presidency at the recent convention in Victoria.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, you're a solid member. You're somebody who's been in the party a long time. I think you represent, a lot of other people who kind of feel the same way. And I was in the party too. I left in disgust, one of the many, just 6 or 7 months ago. But I ran for a vice presidency of the party at the last convention, which was 3 years ago, also here in Victoria. So you wanted to start off by talking about the convention itself and the paradox of labor, the big BC unions, who supposedly fight for working people, but actually support what you called corporate capitalism. So maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, so we can look at our industries. It was kind of interesting because one of the people from the United Steelworkers got up and was talking about how all of these mills had been closed down throughout BC, which is very true.
Lumber mills.
Yeah, lumber mills. And they... Canfor was the name that was repeated over and over and over again. And the labor movement rather than taking over the industries, it goes hat in hand to the corporations and tries to get more money and more power over their lives, if you will. And in so doing, they are not a challenge to the system. They are incorporated into the system. So we have, I believe there are 5 major forestry companies that are basically run the forestry industry. When John Horgan was elected premier, one of the first things he said is, no more raw logs off the coast. Well, I'll tell you something. What he finds out, or what we all find out, is he doesn't have control. Our government does not have control. It's the corporations that are saying, hey, I can send the log to China and make more money than if we keep it in BC. So anyway, that's just an example. And rather than waking up to that fact, I think unions are, they just support what the status quo is. And the same thing is happening in LNG and building pipelines. So we saw that with in the convention, where the talk is for working people, but in actual fact, they're supporting multinational corporations, many of the corporations are owned by people who have relations with Trump. So as we say, elbows up, we're actually supporting the kind of and there it's more like corporate capitalist fascism in the States. So what are we going to do? And I don't know, I've always been surprised or baffled, I guess is a better word, by how the NDP government is captured by these corporations and how they bend to Canada, LNG Canada, which is a conglomeration of a lot of companies. Mostly, the largest one is Shell. Mostly they're foreign-owned companies. So I'm baffled by that. I don't understand. So if we actually took over, if the workers, and if we look at it from a class perspective, if the workers took over what those industries were, if that was their goal, then we could actually keep the wealth in the various communities, because that's where the workers live. The owners don't live there. So all of this wealth is being, exported, and it's just, it doesn't make sense. So labor is old. One of the things that I said, that what made Wayne Gretzky a great player was he went to where the puck was going. He didn't go to where the puck was. He went to where the puck was going. And that's something that we're not doing. As a party, as a government, as a country, we're not going to where the puck is going. In fact, we're almost back to where the puck was. And if the puck isn't going to where I think it's going, which is, where eco-socialists recognize that it's going, if that's not where it's going, it's game over anyway. And that didn't. And the other thing too is the way I started my speech. I quoted David Eby from December.
You mean your speech at the convention?
At the convention, yes. David Eby from December 2022, where he said that we cannot continue to build fossil fuel infrastructure and reach our climate goals, which is very true, which is exactly what the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has said. If we want to be with the science and with the evidence-based truths, then we have to wake up to those realities. So.
Yeah, and of course, there's a big difference between what the NDP leadership says, and David Eby is the premier, and what they always do. They always have the good words, and they sound nice. They can do that, but if you see what they actually do, it makes me think that really the only reason for the NDP is so that there is an existing so-called left-wing party,
Yeah.
and in order to make sure that no real left-wing party can start up, because they control that space.
Yeah.
And they're not really interested. And I'm talking about the leadership. The leadership are not really interested in the environment or people or our society.
Well, and Labor as well, right? Because Labor is, the NDP is the only Labor party in North America. And I guess we'd have to say that it's another paradox is, and something that we've talked about, Jack, is that, we want to have a membership driven party, right? We want to have grassroots. That is actually what the Constitution says. But one of the paradoxes is that a lot of these people would say, well, I'm a member of the NDP and I do feel empowered. What's happening is that those who, and this I would say is within the labor unions particularly, the labor members are told how to vote and they vote that way. That's basically it.
So they have a lot of delegates at the convention, right? Labor brings a lot of delegates, perhaps a controlling number.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Well, and they have the Labor caucus. I was involved in that in a couple of the conventions because I was president, I think of the New Westminster District Labor Council. And so I was there. So I know how those meetings run. And most people come, I mean, let's face it, this is happening throughout Canada now. Most people are very concerned, understandably, about the cost of living. They're just making it. A lot of people are working at 2 or 3 different jobs, and they're paying between 50 and 70% of their wages just for a roof over their heads. And so they come to these conventions and they're looking for leadership, but the leadership is heading in the wrong direction, as far as I'm concerned. And so they go to the Labor caucus going like, okay, what's happening? Trying to catch up with what's going on. And the Labor leaders they have their own agenda. And again, I think that agenda is about maintaining their power and their control, not about using it. And, going back to Karl Marx, you've nothing to lose but your chains. They don't say that anymore.
Yeah. I'm a member of the BC GEU, which is British Columbia's largest labor union.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that there is a complete disassociation between the labor union leadership and the membership. And the leadership does not care for 1 second about the labor, the union members.
Yeah.
The elections they run are completely phony.
Yeah.
Right. I've participated in the election for our labor union leadership, and it is unbelievable the way they operate. Mm-hmm. It's this little gang, and it's been the same gang for about 12 or 15 years. You join it, you start at the bottom, you work your way up in the gang, and if you're good, you become the president or one of the executive. But there is no connection between the leadership of my union and the members. The members are irrelevant. Yeah.
Well, I think and good is sort of defined as, do you fit in?
Yeah.
Will you maintain that status quo within the union? And the BCGEU is not the worst, but just in general, what we're finding, I think, in politics, whether it be within unions or within political parties, is that the leadership does not want involvement from the members. And if someone is active, they shut them down, and people just get disillusioned and quit. So,
we should also mention that there is virtually zero public oversight of a political party. Nobody can tell a political party how to run unless you go to BC Supreme Court and go after them through the BC Supreme Court, which is extremely difficult to do. There is no ethics commissioner watching over the political parties. There is no ombudsperson from outside watching over them. So once a gang takes over a political party, they become judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah.
And they run the appeals as well. If you don't like what they're doing, you have to appeal to them. I mean, it is a horrendous joke. And it's very important, because if our political parties are not working for us, folks, then what the hell is going on in our country, and how can we even pretend that we're a democracy?
Yeah. If our democratic parties aren't democratic, do we have a democracy? Actually, Andrew Coyne, I'm not a big fan, but but he's got a book out, and I always have trouble. I think it's like Crisis in Canadian Democracy or something like that. And it's actually quite a good book, because it's not just about proportional representation, but it's also deals with the lack of democracy within the political party. So I think that in 2019, I ran for the NDP federally. And during that time, I actually, in South Surrey White Rock, it's not an easy thing to be an NDP, but I did double the vote. And then the next 2 years later, we had another election, and they vetted me out. They didn't allow me to run.
The leadership of the party.
And this was the leadership, and as you say, it's like, there is a process through which you can complain about the decision, but of course it's them going like, I wonder if we made the right decision. Yes, I think we did. So it's not really.
And when you say they vetted you out, you don't mean local leadership. You mean, I guess, the national leadership?
Yes, yeah. The local leadership, the president of the Electoral District Association asked me to run, and at first I said no, because I'd run 2 years before, but then finally I said, okay, let's, because I was retiring at the time too, so I wanted to be able to, finish up my career, and it just so happened, because it was a fall election, that I felt that I could. Do a decent job, because I'd be retired at that point. So, but the reasons given, I won't go into all the details, but at one point I said, it sounds to me, to this woman that was vetting me, that you want someone that has no ideas, no opinions, and has never done anything.
But will do what they're told.
And her response was, that would be ideal.
Yes. And so you're laughing, and people may think this is not the most important thing in the world, but if the local membership cannot choose their own candidate to run in a provincial or federal election, and they can't, the leadership has complete power to choose who the candidate is. Mm-hmm. So if the local members cannot choose the candidate, then what in the world is going on?
Yeah, no, this is it, and they can't. And in our case, and it was what happens. We had people, my goodness, they'd been with the NDP for like 50 years, and we resigned. The executive resigned, and just they gave up, because it was like a final straw of and that's what ends up happening. So the only ones left are those who will do what they're told. Yes. It is something I will say about the Angela Appadurai campaign, and that was one that I was quite involved in, and I was involved with Dogwood as well. And in a situation like that, had we stayed the course with the new members, we could have made an impact. And I know it was very disappointing for Angela and all of us.
Let's just explain who Angela Appadurai is. She, when John Horgan, who was our NDP premier, resigned a couple of years ago for health reasons, there had to be, and he was the premier, so there was a leadership race to choose a new leader for the NDP who would also become the premier. And the only person who stepped forward from the from the group that runs the party was David Eby, who is now our premier, and he was on his way to being picked unanimously. But at the very last minute, a young woman by the name of Angela Appadurai entered the race, and she was, perhaps like you, really supported by a lot of grassroots members. And thousands of people who had given up on the BC NDP rejoined the party to support her. And she was going to beat David Eby and become the premier of our province. So the party kicked her out with the full support of the corporate media. And David Eby cheated his way into becoming the premier. And that's never talked about by our media, as if it's not the case. But for that to happen in Canada, where somebody who was going to beat the standing member and become the outside leader of our party, somebody who the members wanted, and they just kicked her out. And that didn't even raise a ripple, which just shows how completely undemocratic our country has become.
And I would say that more important than the membership wanting her, because a lot of the members were, toe the line. That's why they were still members. The people of BC wanted her. These people joined the party, and a lot rejoined the party because they saw a glimmer of hope. I was at the initial launch of the campaign, and in, I think it was like 45 minutes, we raised $35,000.
Which was the entry fee to get her in.
That was the entry. The entry fee was $40,000, but we almost made it just in that initial 45 minutes. And it was, the people saw hope in that. I have to mention Zoran Momdani. They see hope.
The mayor of New York,
yeah, the new mayor of New York, and I hope that we can get a bit of momentum from that as well, and start to deal with these multiple crises that we're in. They're all related, and it's all about capitalism.
And it's all about who has power.
Well, yeah.
And if the people don't have power, and we don't, then this is not a democracy. This is something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And certainly within the BC NDP, and I'm sure every other major party in Canada, the power is at the top, held by a little gang who can be trusted by the corporate interests who run our country.
Yeah.
And that's the way it goes.
Yeah, no, that's, as I say, whenever they tried to stop the raw logs going off the coast, our government did not have power to do that. Or at least they didn't take the power.
Exactly. They have the power. They
have the power, but they just didn't do it. So,
and if they did, if let's say they did do that, David Eby would be out within 6 weeks. The media would turn on him. They'd attack. And the problem is the people trust the media. So if the media say, "Oh, David Eby is a bad person. Look what he's doing," blah 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 blah, within 2 or 3 weeks, the party would be in disarray, and he would be removed. Which is, that's the way our province runs and our country runs. Yeah. So no politician dares stand up against the media, even if they wanted to, which they don't.
Yeah, well, and I think that we have to look at social media as well, and how it is that it is siloing us and separating us, and actually squashing honest debate and conversations where we can actually come together rather than. I'm a director with the Social Justice Film Society, and we just showed a film on Friday called The Social Dilemma, and it's all about this idea of the social media and what it's playing. But here's the weakness of the media too. You might notice what I'm wearing here. Here we have a genocide that we're watching on television every night, and yet somehow people, I don't know. There are people who are opposed to it, obviously. I was just at a demonstration. It's like watching the extermination of Jews in Nazi Germany every night, and not doing anything about it. And in fact, what they're doing is they're sending arms to Israel. It would be like sending arms to Hitler and Nazi Germany. It's so insane, but it shows how corporations, because there's more money to be made in war than there is in peace. And so how corporations are influencing what it is. And I should bring up that the last convention that you were at as well, we had an emergency resolution for the party to call on the Canadian government to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. Now that was, 2 years ago. And I followed up, as did a colleague of mine. And what we were told is, when these things become, when the resolutions are passed, they are put on the Mobilize, which is their the NDP, BC NDP website. They're put up there and they become policy. They're not acted upon. They just become policy. It's just insane.
Yeah.
It's insane. Yeah.
And actually, anybody who knows a bit about the history of World War II knows that, in fact, Western corporations and Western money was flowing into Nazi Germany.
Absolutely.
In order to bring the Nazis to power and then to support them throughout the war. I mean, we're never told the truth about World War II, and somehow they get away with that. It's bizarre.
And go ahead.
Can I ask you, what was the election process like? You ran for a vice presidency of the BC NDP at the recent convention, which was just a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Would you say it was a free and fair and democratic election?
Well, first of all, I had to get a couple of people, of course, which is free and fair enough, to nominate me.
Of course.
That wasn't too hard. But then you kind of have to be accepted, and which actually I was accepted, fortunately.
So you mean you have to be allowed into the race?
You're kind of, vetted. And then
by the existing leadership.
Yeah. And then what happens is you can submit a 2-page document, which is not circulated before it's actually circulated at the convention. It's not even circulated. It's put up on their website. Okay.
Right. So nobody goes to.
Yeah. Nobody's going to, you're at a convention, right? So you don't have the time to really assess who it is that's running for these things. And then you're given a 2-minute speech.
Oh, you're given 2 minutes?
Yeah, 2 minutes.
Oh, at mine, I was only given 1 minute. Yeah. 1 minute to be a vice president, which is the people who basically, the president and the vice presidents, run the NDP for the next 3 years. I was given 1 minute at the entire convention. You were given 2 minutes. Yeah. And at the end of 1 minute, I was cut off.
Yeah. No, this is it. They cut off your mic. So very similar to the way resolutions are put forward, right? We ended up with, good Lord, it was hundreds of resolutions. Yeah. And we were giving like 48 hours to assess them. Yeah. And there's a resolutions committee that puts them in order, which is pretty questionable. Then you can, if you want to move something up, you can go to the resolutions committee and they'll decide whether or not they made the right decision. Again, right? It's like,
but when you ran for a vice presidency of the BC NDP, were you allowed to contact the members to tell them that you were running and why you were running? Yeah. Before they voted?
No. As I say, the only thing.
Just imagine that, folks. He's running for a vice presidency of the BC NDP, and he, just as I was, you are not allowed to contact the members to tell them you're running and to tell them what the issues are until after the members have already voted. And even then, you can't contact them, but a page is put up somewhere which nobody knows about. And that's the kind of election that that all the political parties have, I assume.
Yeah. And I will say, too, that there was a slate running,
Right,
And
of course.
and David Eby endorsed the slate from the stage on Friday night at a social event. He endorsed this slate, and
And the slate is
well,
the gang.
yeah. I mean, obviously, if you've got the premier endorsing you, and I'll just tell you that also, I will say that I was also running for the regional rep for Surrey Delta, on the Standing Committee on Environment and Economy. I've held that position for 4 years. And so one of the slate members nominated someone else in our area caucus. And the guy got up and he said, one of the things he said was, coal can be clean. Coal, and he won.
And he won.
And he won. So that tells you head in the sand or what. But anyway.
It's, I mean, the underlying issue here is, again, that if our political parties are not democratic and the party members have really no voice in what goes on in the party and party policy and how the party operates, then we are not a democracy, folks, and we are not. I mean, that's just the way it is. The way, I mean, to me, the way a party should work. So let's say federally, we elect 343 members of parliament federally. I think that's the number. And in each area, each of the 343 areas in which we elect an MP, a member of parliament, each party will have a riding association or an electoral district association. And that is where the power is supposed to be. The members of each of those 343 ridings are supposed to kind of control their candidate. And the candidate is responsible to them. That's responsible government. That should be responsible, where the people who get elected are responsible to the members. But all of that is gone. That is completely gone. Now, the party members are Zerosville and completely irrelevant. And all the people we elect are completely controlled by the party leadership. And if the people we elect don't like that, then they cannot have a political career because they will be kicked out. And, you know, if that is the basis of our democracy, that's why I think we have the housing crisis, the healthcare crisis, the cancer crisis, and everything else, because our governments don't work for us. And if we want to fix things up, we have got to retake control of our political parties. And that can be done. It can be done, but only if people come together and organize and make it happen. So, Stephen, I put you in charge of that, as you know.
I know. Yeah, I keep passing the buck. Back to you, Jack.
Yeah, I can't because I just don't have the connections, right? I just don't know the people. But
yeah,
I think it could be done. Oh, well, Angela Appadurai did it.
Yes.
So, you know, she entered the race to get rid of David Eby, and she would have won, except they kicked her out.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I often say that the person that was put in charge of the leadership election, her name was Elizabeth Cull, which I think is so appropriate because that's what she did. She culled. I mean, I always say too that this goes well beyond the NDP. This is the political situation that we're in.
Yes.
And if we don't have kind of economic democracy, if you will, where people have some sort of economic equality, we're not going to have a political political democracy either. The United States is a very good example of that. And Canada seems to be heading in that direction as well. We need to have economic control over our lives. And this is something that has just been lost again or threatened, let's say. And so when that's threatened, then political democracy goes out the window. The environment is just not an issue anymore. The issue is housing and affordability, groceries, keeping a job, keeping an income. But those things are all related, and they're related with the environment as well. So we've lost control over our economy and our political systems, and we have to try to get that back. And what I was thinking when you were talking, Jack, is that you've got to have a strong stomach to actually stay the course and make the change that is necessary, because it's not going to happen with just gee, I think this would be a good idea.
Yeah.
You really have to stick it out. I often think about the Leonard Cohen line. They sentenced me to 20 years of boredom for trying to change the system from within. It's a great line. So what I would say is, come on, let's get it together, and we'll be coming to reward them. Yeah. So.
And I'd also, I guess we're kind of at the end here, but I'd also say that all of the things we're talking about are things that are never talked about in our society. The media never talk about them, and neither do the politicians, because this is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And the owners of the media, who are big business, they do not want us to know about this, because if we did know about it, people would be furious.
Yeah.
So it's just never discussed. And because it's never discussed, the situation goes on and on.
And I'm trying to think of it's decades ago now, where I would have these conversations with people, and by the end of it, it'd be like, well, just totally discounting what it was that we said. Well, I guess we solved all the world's problems. Just kind of like denigrating that connection and the recognition of what it was that we were up against, right? And I think of Marshall McLuhan, the two things: the medium is the message. And the other thing, too, that he said was, Marshall McLuhan, well-known media, he's one of the first, I think, of professors of mass media, teaching about what the results or the impact would be. Anyway, so the medium is the message, and the other thing too is you are the product. And what we have to recognize, I think, as individuals and as groups, as communities, is that community is also a medium. It is through that we can share information and come to perhaps some agreement on ways of dealing with all our multiple crises. And the world itself, Earth itself, if we want to solve the environmental crisis that we're in, we have to use the world itself, the Earth itself, as a medium, and do a little bit more forest bathing, perhaps. Get in touch with it, because otherwise it's not going to be serving us unless we serve it.
Yes, I would agree 100%. Stephen Crosier, thank you very much. Unless you have a few more words you'd like to say, maybe we were going to go for half an hour and we have.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not sure how to wind it up exactly. I mean, I think there's quite a bit of stuff there that we've talked about that maybe something short could be made. I guess if I were to say anything to wind it up, that I'll finish off with this. We often talk about hope, and I remember reading Camus when I was in university many moons ago, and he said we must live without hope, and I thought, oh my God, that's pretty disappointing, pretty harsh. But I've thought about it a lot, and there's a Low John saying that says we must abandon all hope of fruition. And again, it's like, well, geez, that doesn't sound very positive. But when you think about it, hope is about a future that is not here yet. We should be taking step by step. And as we take that step, as we take those steps, then maybe that future that we are envisioning is not exactly, maybe we'll miss something along the road that could be of benefit to us, the world. And the other thing too is Chris Hedges says, I don't fight fascists to win. I fight fascists because they are fascists. He's an American journalist and he was war correspondent for the New York Times until he started speaking out against going into Iraq for the second time and was exposing those lies. And,
which is a very good point, because it's true within the field of so-called journalism.
yes,
If you are a journalist and you want to say what the owners don't want, then you are gone, including Chris Hedges, who was very prominent, and many others.
That's why I was saying that it goes beyond, the BC NDP. It's a part of everything here that we're doing now. So yeah. So I think we have to work hard together and recognize the connections that we have with each other, and don't denigrate what those things are and the connection that we have for the earth. And let's face it, indigenous wisdom, they didn't screw it up the way we Europeans have. So,
Stephen Crosier, thank you very much.
okay, thank you.